Et cette fois-ci, on va même pas voir les journalistes qui posent des questions, ou aussi hein, on peut leur demander d'allumer leur caméra alors. Comme ça, on les voit, c'est moins impersonnel. Ah oui, c'est bien. Sinon, on éteint là.
Bonjour à tous et bienvenue à la conférence de presse de l'Olympique.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome along to this Matchday -1 press conference with Lyon, Rudi Garcia and Houssem Aouar. I'd ask you to turn your cameras on so that we can see you when you ask your questions. It's hard for us otherwise. So you can ask your questions to Rudi Garcia and Houssem Aouar. I'd just like you to mention who you're asking the question to. That will make things a lot easier. Thank you. Good evening. A question for Rudi Garcia. Given that you knocked out Juventus in the previous round, do you think you'll have a bit more confidence, little less apprehension to come up against another big side in European football in the shape of Manchester City? You're absolutely right in your question. I think the victory against Juventus needs to give us greater confidence. And of course, yes, we do have greater desire, you get greater appetite once you begin eating, so to speak. But Manchester City are naturally favourites for this tie. But the start of the Champions League quarter-finals has shown that potentially the odds can be overturned. We hope that come tomorrow night, based on what we've seen in the first two matches, the two outsiders might be able to overturn the odds. Good evening, gents. Can you hear me? Yes, perfect. I had a question for Rudi and one for Houssem. Yes, absolutely. I think it helps us first and foremost from a mental perspective. We've already done it. And I think it will be very possible on a one-off game. And everything is very different. We need to make sure that we prepare very well. And we prepare slightly differently to how we did in the past. Because things have moved on and it's now up to us to make sure that we can make the difference tomorrow night. Just to come back to what Houssem has said, I think it was wonderful what they did back then in the group stage, but clearly this is a different tie. It's a knockout match. But what they've experienced has proven that no match is over come the first whistle. You need to try and do everything when you've got the ball to try and score a goal, because we have a team that can do that. And we need to do that even better than we did since we came back after lockdown. We need to make sure we get quality service into our strikers and make sure that we're dangerous in the final third. But we know that we won't necessarily win the possession battle against Manchester City, because it's in their DNA, the fact that they tend to hog possession. But we're going to try and use possession as best we can. So we need to try and win it back as best we can as well. And we mustn't allow their team play and their individual talent to cause us problems, because they are a very fearful side. Good evening, Rudi. Good evening, Houssem. I've got a question for Rudi first and foremost. The teams that have played 3-5-2 against Manchester City this season have caused them a lot of problems. Wolverhampton and Arsenal recently. Has that given you some food for thought ahead of the game? Not overly, although we have naturally watched their matches post-lockdown, if you will. Arsenal didn't really play with a genuine five at the back, but they had four at the back with Maitland-Niles. But what matters is not necessarily the formation, it's how you play within it, it's our mindset, it's what we showed against Juventus. It's about having the right mindset and outdoing yourselves, working hard for one another. We're going to have to run a great deal, both to win the ball back and defend, but also to use the ball, because we need to make sure that we press the opposition as high as possible and cause them some issues. We'll try and play to our strengths, and we will try and cancel out the strengths of Manchester City, even though they have many. Houssem, good evening. It feels like the Lyon squad are even more united in the dressing room since lockdown. What has happened? Is it just big matches, or has something changed things, or you've just put everything to one side, you're all fighting for one another? I don't know how you saw it was necessarily less the case before lockdown. But as I said, we're very together and united ahead of these big matches, and we're also going to be very humble in our approach and make sure we have a lot of confidence. I think big matches such as these always give you a lot of desire to get out there and play, and also work very hard for one another. You've pretty much got all of the names of the journalists wrong so far. Let's see if you get that one right. Oh, spot on. I had a question for Rudi, first and foremost. Compared with last week, Jason Denayer, Maxwell Cornet, are there some reassuring news with regards to their fitness levels? We'll see with our final training session later on. We hope that there are no more question marks about Jason and Maxwell. I think that will be the case. It was a relatively light session yesterday, but they looked good. Ever since the Juventus match, first and foremost, we recovered, but then we worked very hard. So I think and I hope that we'll have the squad fit and available to take on Manchester City tomorrow night. I also had a question for Houssem. Lyon are slightly unexpected in this final eight, if you will, but could that also be a strength for your team? The fact that Leipzig knocked out Atletico, Atalanta nearly knocked out PSG. Do you think this could be the year for the slightly less fancied teams? And maybe you could do something great tomorrow night. Listen, I hope that's the case, but what we did against Juventus is naturally the fact that shows that big sides against Manchester City will prepare a great deal against us. We're very clear in our minds that we're not the favourites for this tie, but we're going to give it our best shot. We're going to play without fear. We've got a lot of motivation, and as you said, in theory, the less fancied sides on paper have done well, and we're going to do our utmost to be part of them. Good evening. I apologise, the video is not working. How do you feel physically after that very demanding League Cup final and the game against Juventus? And a question for Houssem. How do you feel in terms of your fitness levels? I hope that we'll be as fit tomorrow night as we were for the 120 minutes against PSG, and also in the second leg of our tie against Juventus. Yes, we worked for 2 months, 8 weeks. It was a very long pre-season, if you will, but thus far it's borne fruit. Even though Juventus were more fit and firing and they had finished their league season, but the last 15-20 minutes were tricky. But with 5 substitutions, you can almost turn over half of the team with fresh legs, and that's very important. And that's why you get a result with 16 as opposed to 11, actually 25, because we've got 25 in our squad here in Lisbon, but those that will come off the bench will be very important. We've already seen that in the first 2 quarter-finals. The 2 goal scorers that got the winning goals actually came off the bench. I think that's very important. I hope that we'll be fit and firing tomorrow night. It will be hugely important. So, Houssem, how do you feel from a fitness perspective? Yeah, physically, I think we all feel good. Me personally, I feel very good ever since we resumed action. I think all of the squad has been well trained, well prepared. It's only natural to have a few question marks and doubts after a long period without playing. But against Paris Saint-Germain, I think we showed that we did have good fitness levels, and I hope that that can continue tomorrow night. A question for Rudi. Given that this is a one-off tie as opposed to first and second leg, 2-legged tie, does that change your approach from a tactical perspective? And a question a bit more about the atmosphere and the mindset. The fact that PSG are into the last 4, has that given you a bit of boost to the fact that it might be the year for French football? Is there a bit more excitement and maybe have 2 French sides in the final 4? We hope so. That would be absolutely historic to have 2 French sides in the last 4. So we really want to follow PSG on that score. But it doesn't really change our approach, whether it's a 2-legged tie or a one-off match. What is the case is that normally it's harder to pull off a shock over a 2-legged tie, and yet we managed to do that against Juventus, which is very important. So in a one-off tie, I hope that we might have a greater chance of going through. A question for Rudi. Houssem 2, if you wish. Guardiola recently said that motivation could actually outdo tactical aspects. Do you agree? The tactical side of things is important, that's for sure, but as I said earlier on, the mindset and the mood in the camp, ours in particular, that will be something that we can use to our advantage if we're to have a good quarter-final tie. Houssem has spoken about how motivated the players are, so are the staff. We're all united, all for one and one for all, and we're all ready to give absolutely everything in this match to try and continue our European campaign. A question for both of you. Speaking about Maxwell Cornet, Rudi, what have you seen about him, given that you have started playing him out wide on the left? And Houssem, we've spoken a little bit about these 3 goals against Manchester City. Yeah, sure, we've spoken about those 3 goals. But I don't know whether he's going to be involved, but he's performed very well in that position. I tend to operate more on the left-hand side, and he helps me a great deal because he really covers things very well. He's got a lovely left foot, and I'm pleased with what he's producing. Maxwell is an attacking player in my mind, predominantly on the left-hand side, even though he's often operated as a wide forward on the right, and that's allowed him to cut inside on his left foot and also exploit his pace. But he's able to do a number of different things. He's got a good right foot as well, and just as Houssem has said, he thinks about the team first and foremost, but he's got quality ability, and not just in terms of his fitness levels. He can still improve a great deal, but he crosses well, he provides good assists for his teammates, excellent service. He still needs to refine his knowledge of that particular position, because when you play with three, then maybe you need to make sure that you're also up top even when the play is developing on the right hand side, and he also needs to come back and give a helping hand to the left midfielder and also the left central midfielder. You have the opportunity to once again make it into the last four of the Champions League, just as Lyon did in the past, albeit it will be played behind closed doors. Do you think there'll be the same motivation, the same adrenaline coursing through your veins before you play such an important fixture without having the crowd driving you on? Have you had some messages of encouragement? Do you know what it means to your fans? We certainly miss our fans. I hope that we'll be able to see them back in stadiums as soon as possible. That goes for fans of all teams. For the moment, it's not possible, but Houssem has said it better than I can. He's a local lad. He came through our academy, and it's very important for us at Lyon to have players that have graduated from the academy. We have a very strong identity. We know that Lyon are right behind us, the whole city, but I'll set this one up for Houssem because he can speak better about that. Yes, absolutely. We've really received a number of messages. We really feel that everyone in Lyon is behind us, but playing without a crowd is naturally a different kettle of fish, but the same goes for both sides. And in a one-off tie, naturally, things do change differently compared with previous years, but I don't necessarily think there is a difference in terms of the excitement and fervour. It's still a Champions League quarter-final. There's a lot of enthusiasm and expectation surrounding this fixture. Final question of this press conference now. Good evening once again. A slightly more personal question for Houssem. Houssem, Pep Guardiola earlier on really rates you as a player. We know that you might take another step in your career later on this summer. Is tomorrow important? He can only leave if we win the Champions League. I'll answer that. Thank you, Rudi. No, I don't know if it's the job interview per se tomorrow night, but it's always very flattering to have your name linked with big clubs like that. But if I'm honest, I think it's slightly off topic, not particularly relevant ahead of a big game. We're going to try and prepare as best we can. I'm 100% focused on Lyon because these are really important matches and they're a real joy to be involved in. Thank you. Have a great evening. Good evening. Good evening.